Alec Knight didn't expect that his craving for a greasy burger at 1:30 in the morning would lead him to the woman who'd flip his entire world upside down. The tires of his matte black Aston Martin purred against the cracked pavement as he pulled up to the flickering drive-through menu of Burger Brothers, the only 24-hour joint open this late in the sleepy side of town. He tapped his fingers against the steering wheel, waiting for a voice to crackle through the speaker. "Welcome to Burger Brothers. What can I get started for you?" came a soft, tired voice. Alec leaned toward the speaker. "Double cheeseburger, extra pickles, fries, large Coke, and surprise me with something sweet." There was a pause. "You want me to pick your dessert?" "Yeah," he said with a grin, even though no one could see it. "I trust you." Another pause, then a laugh. "All right, mystery man, pull around." As he rounded the corner and inched toward the window, he caught sight of the girl behind the glass. She was tugging her headset off, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. She looked young, mid-20s maybe, with tired eyes, but the kind of smile that made you want to ask what she was thinking. Her name read Faye. He handed her his black card. She blinked down at it. "You're paying for a $9 order with this?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Should I be worried you'll decline it?" "No," she said slowly, sliding the card through. "The people who carry cards like this usually don't show up here in the middle of the night. Maybe I needed a break from steak tartare and silent penthouse dinners." She looked at him again, this time for a second longer. "Whatever that means." Alec took his drink with a grin. "You picked my dessert?" "I did. Warm brownie. Extra fudge." She passed him the bag, their fingers brushing for half a second longer than necessary. "Faye," he read off her tag. "Nice name." "It's just a name," she replied, but the corners of her lips curled up. "Enjoy your food, fancy guy." He didn't pull off right away. "You always work nights?" "Most nights. Pays better." He paused. "Do you ever take breaks?" She narrowed her eyes. "Are you trying to ask me out in the drive-through lane?" "I'm asking if you'll take your 15 and sit with me while I eat." She blinked, caught off guard. "You're serious?" "As a heart attack." Faye hesitated, then glanced over her shoulder at the empty kitchen. "Give me 5 minutes." Alec pulled into the empty parking lot and parked under a dying streetlight. A few minutes later, the passenger door opened and Faye slid in, holding a paper cup of coffee. He unwrapped his burger, took a bite, and let out a groan. "This might be the best thing I've eaten in weeks." She laughed. "You must eat some really boring food." "I do," he admitted. "My chef's obsessed with quinoa." "You have a chef?" He shrugged. "I have a lot of things." She sipped her coffee and studied him. "You don't look like you belong here." "Maybe I don't," he said, gaze steady. "But I'm tired of places I do belong." That made her go quiet for a second. The air between them shifted, heavier but not uncomfortable. "You always pick up girls at drive-thrus?" she asked eventually. He chuckled. "Only the ones who serve me brownies and challenge me with their eyes." She looked away, but her smile stayed. "You're weird." Alec leaned back in his seat, watching her. "You're interesting." They sat like that for a little while, him with his burger and her with her coffee, talking about everything and nothing. She told him she was saving up for nursing school. He told her he worked in investments. He didn't mention the private jet, the multiple homes, or the fact that his name was printed on the side of 3 skyscrapers in the city. Somehow none of that felt important. When her break was up, she stood outside the car and looked at him through the window. "Thanks for the brownie moment. Can I see you again?" he asked, surprising even himself. "Drive-thru's open tomorrow," she teased, stepping back toward the building. "I meant outside of here." She paused. "We'll see." And with that, she disappeared inside. Alec sat there for a long time, staring at the spot where she'd stood. He didn't know her favorite song. He didn't know if she liked dogs or if she was a morning person. But he knew one thing for sure. He'd be back tomorrow. The next night, Alec returned. Same hour, same parking spot. But this time, he didn't order dessert. He watched the window, heart pacing in a way that was unfamiliar, too uncertain, too expectant. When her face appeared behind the glass, brushing sleep from her eyes and tying her apron. Something in him settled. "Back already?" Faye asked when she slid the window open. "Didn't come for the food." She blinked, then tilted her head. "Kind of bold to admit that. I figured you'd appreciate the honesty." She rested her hands on the sill. "You don't strike me as the honest type." "Why?" "You dodge questions. You give half answers. You make jokes to change the subject." Alec hesitated. "I'm not used to people asking me things I don't want to answer." "Well," she said, pushing a few receipts aside, "I'm not used to people showing up twice in a row just to talk to me." He reached into the passenger seat and pulled out a small white box tied with navy ribbon. She eyed it. "What's that?" "Something pointless," he said, holding it out. "But I saw it and thought of you." She didn't take it immediately. "You don't even know me." "I know your laugh made my day better." Faye opened the box slowly. Inside lay a delicate silver keychain shaped like a stethoscope, a tiny heart at its center. Her fingers brushed over it. "How did you?" "You said nursing school," he said softly. This felt like something to keep you going. She didn't speak right away. When she finally looked up, her eyes were unreadable. "No one's ever given me anything like this. Not even my own family." Alec leaned his arm against the window frame. "You deserve more than keychains and compliments through glass." Her laugh was quieter this time, almost unsure. "You don't even know where I'm from." "Then tell me." Faye folded her arms. "I grew up in Edenbridge. Not the nice part. My mom left when I was 10. My dad drinks more than he breathes. And I've been working since I was 16 to keep the lights on." Alec nodded once. "That's the kind of thing people should know about you." She gave him a look. "You say that like you'd stick around after hearing it." "I'm still here." She studied him for a moment. "You're a puzzle. 1 minute you're charming, the next you're quiet. Like you're carrying something." "I am." "Are you going to tell me?" "Not tonight." "Then I guess that makes us even." Before she could slide the window shut, Alec asked, "When's your next night off?" Faye hesitated, then answered, "Saturday. Let me take you somewhere." "I don't do fancy." "Good," he said. "Neither do I. Not when it matters." Her gaze softened, but her posture stayed guarded. "I'll think about it." He nodded. "That's all I ask." As he pulled away, his phone buzzed in the console. He ignored it. His assistant could wait. The board could wait. Everything could wait except her. Back at his penthouse in the heart of Manhattan, Alec tossed his keys onto the marble counter and stared out across the skyline. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a glittering view of the city, but tonight it all felt hollow. The silence in the room pressed in, too clean, too sterile. He loosened his tie, poured a drink, and sat down at the grand piano he hadn't touched in months. His fingers hovered over the keys, then settled into a melody soft, unfinished, restless. He didn't know what he was doing, not really. But the girl in the drive-thru had a fire in her he hadn't seen in anyone in years. She was real. She didn't care who he was or what he owned. She didn't ask for anything. And somehow that made him want to give her everything. When Saturday came, he waited at the edge of the parking lot, engine idling. Faye stepped out 10 minutes late, wearing jeans and a worn sweatshirt, her hair pulled back. She hesitated when she saw the car. "This is a date?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "I promised no fancy," he said, opening the door. She climbed in and looked around. "This car costs more than my tuition." He glanced at her. "You're not your tuition." She didn't answer that, only looked out the window as he drove. He didn't take her to a restaurant or a rooftop bar. Instead, he parked near the river where a single food truck glowed under a string of lights surrounded by a scattering of picnic tables. Faye blinked. "You brought me to Taco Tom's? You said you don't do fancy." I listened. She laughed, then covered her mouth. "Sorry. This is so weird." He stepped out and opened her door. Weird's underrated. They sat under the lights, sharing tacos and stories. He told her about the time he got kicked out of boarding school for hacking the school's donation records. She told him about the time she faked a stomach flu to skip standardized testing and spent the day watching classic movies with her neighbor's cat. By the time they finished their meal, her walls had lowered, her laughter was easier, and her gaze lingered a little longer each time it met his. As they walked back to the car, she looked up at him. "You didn't ask for anything tonight." "Not one thing. I didn't come to take anything," he said, voice low. "I just wanted your time." She stopped beside the passenger door. "Why?" Alec looked at her, really looked. "Because when I'm around you, I forget why I built walls in the first place." Something flickered in her expression, recognition, maybe. Understanding. And then, without warning, she leaned up and kissed him. It was brief, testing, but it left him breathless. She pulled back, cheeks flushed. "That was impulsive." He touched his fingers to his lips. "Do it again." She laughed, shaking her head. "Don't push it, fancy guy." But when she climbed into the car, her hand brushed his again. And that was enough for now. Alec didn't call it a date, not out loud. But after that night by the river, something shifted. He showed up again the next evening, and the next, sometimes without even ordering, just waiting in that same spot until Faye noticed him and slipped outside during her break. They didn't talk about what they were doing. They just did it. And somehow that made it feel more real. But by the end of the week, Alec had a problem. His world was beginning to bleed into hers. It started with the headlines. He was on the cover of a business magazine, again his face cold, sharp-jawed, and distant beneath a bold title, "Knight Capital's Next Move. Will Alec Knight save the shattered tech sector?" He shut the magazine and tossed it to the backseat of his car before pulling up to Burger Brothers that night. Faye wasn't at the window. Instead, a stocky guy with a mop of curls handed him his order and squinted. "You're the guy who sits in the lot all night, right?" Alec took the bag. "Where's Faye?" Called out. Said she had something to deal with. He didn't ask what. He just drove. She lived in a cramped building above a laundromat, 2 neighborhoods over. He knew because she'd mentioned it offhand once, just enough for him to remember. Alec had never driven there before, but tonight he needed to. He parked across the street and waited, watching the second-floor window lit by a dull yellow lamp. After nearly an hour, the door below opened and she stepped out, pulling on a faded hoodie and stuffing her keys into her pocket. Alec got out of the car and crossed the street. Faye paused as she spotted him. "You followed me?" "I went looking." "There's a difference." She folded her arms. "Why?" "You didn't show up. You always show up." "I had things to handle." "I figured that," he said. "But I didn't like not knowing if you were okay." She looked down for a moment, then back up. "My dad's in the hospital. He got into a fight at his bar, cracked 2 ribs, and bled on the floor for hours before someone called an ambulance." Alec's voice dropped. "Is he stable?" "Barely. And the hospital won't keep him long because he doesn't have insurance. I was on the phone all day trying to figure out how to pay for a damn CT scan." He didn't hesitate. "I'll cover it." "No. You didn't even let me finish. You don't get to fix my life with your money." "I'm not trying to fix your life. I'm trying to make sure you don't drown in it." She stepped back. "Do you know what happens when people take help from men like you?" His expression hardened. "What kind of man do you think I am?" "The kind who always expects something in return." He stared at her for a long moment, then pulled out his wallet and tossed a folded piece of paper onto the hood of her car. Faye looked down. It wasn't a check. It was an invoice for medical services. Paid in full. No name. No address. No trace. "I didn't put my name on it," Alec said. "So your pride can stay intact. You had no right." "I had every right to care." Her jaw tightened, and for a moment he thought she was going to walk away. But she didn't. Instead, she asked, "Why are you really here, Alec?" He exhaled. "Because I don't want to go back to being the guy who only talks to people when there's something to negotiate. You make the silence bearable. You make me feel like I matter for something other than numbers and profit margins." She crossed her arms, quieter now. You think saying that makes it better? No, he said. But it's the truth. They stood in the middle of the street, the city stretching out around them, and for a beat, neither of them moved. Then she said, I can't be a distraction for you. You have a world I'll never fit into. Alec stepped closer. I don't want you to fit into it. I want to build something new with you. Faye didn't respond. She just turned and walked back inside. Alec didn't follow. The next morning, Alec sat in the corner of a leather-clad boardroom 10 floors above Wall Street. While his partners discussed a merger he couldn't care less about. The words blurred together: acquisition, equity, liabilities. His phone buzzed once. A text from his assistant. Page 6 is asking for comment. He didn't need to ask what it was about. Alec opened the link. There it was, his car, parked outside Faye's building. A grainy shot of him stepping onto the curb. The caption read, Alec Knight's late-night mystery woman? New romance or scandal in the making? He closed it and stood abruptly. I'm out, he said to the room. The board members looked up, startled. Alec, we haven't even discussed. I said I'm out. Sell Knight Capital's share. Take the payout. I don't care. Are you serious? One of the partners asked. Alec looked him dead in the eye. Dead serious. Because in that moment he realized something with startling clarity. He didn't want power if it meant losing her. He didn't want the empire if it meant never having a chance to build something real. And he was done letting the past dictate his future. That night, he drove to the hospital and waited outside until Faye emerged, looking exhausted, her hoodie pulled tight against the wind. He didn't say anything. He just held the passenger door open. She stood there, staring at him. I saw the article, she said finally. I figured. You quit your company? Yes. Why? Because I want something that can't be bought. She slid into the seat. They didn't kiss. They didn't speak. They just sat in the quiet, the weight of everything unspoken settling between them. But Alec knew this wasn't the end. This was the beginning. Faye stood at the edge of the rooftop garden. Her arms tugged into the sleeves of Alec's jacket, which hung heavy on her shoulders. The city glowed beneath her, all steel and light and motion, but she didn't move. From this height, it looked like something distant and quiet, like a painting instead of a place she'd once believed she'd never belong. Alec closed the door behind him softly, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He handed her one without a word. She took it and looked out over the skyline. I still don't understand how this is real. It is, Alec said. Even if it doesn't feel like it yet. She turned toward him. You gave up everything. He shook his head. I didn't. I traded it. For what? For peace, he said. For mornings that don't start with a boardroom and end with a headline. For the first time in years, I'm not trying to outrun anything. Faye looked down into her cup. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up back in my apartment with the ceiling dripping and the radiator hissing, and none of this will have happened. You won't. She tilted her head. How can you be so sure? Because I've spent years building things that never made me feel half as grounded as you do. He leaned beside her on the railing. And I have no intention of letting that go. The wind tugged at her hair and she tucked it behind her ear, her expression unreadable. I got a letter today, she said after a moment. From the nursing school. Alec straightened. And I'm in. A slow smile spread across his face. That's incredible. She nodded once. It starts in 6 weeks. Evening program. 3 nights a week, plus weekends. We'll make it work. She gave him a look. You don't even know where we'll be in 6 weeks. I do, he said. Wherever you are. Faye looked away, blinking hard. You say things like that and I don't know what to do with them. Believe them, Alec said quietly. That's all you have to do. They stood in silence for a while, the sound of distant traffic rising up like a lullaby. Then Faye set her cup down and turned to him fully. I don't want to be taken care of, she said. I need you to understand that. I've spent my whole life surviving. If I'm going to build something with you, it has to be as equals. You think I want anything less? I don't know, she said. You've lived in a world that teaches people to buy what they want. I've lived in one where you earn every inch. Alec reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. He handed it to her without explanation. She unfolded it slowly. Her eyes scanned the page, then widened. This is a lease, she said. For what? For the space below your building. The shop that's been empty for years. She looked up confused. I bought it, Alec said. But it's in your name now. She opened her mouth, but he held up his hand. It's not a gift. It's a promise. You said once you wanted to open a clinic someday, something small. I figured you could start here. On your terms. Your staff. Your patients. Her lips parted, but no words came. I didn't do this to fix anything, he said. I did it so you'd know I believe in you. Faye stepped back, the paper still in her hand. You don't even know if I'm ready. You're already doing more than most people ever dare to. She stared at him for a long time, until her voice cracked. You could have just taken me to dinner. Too easy. She laughed then, shaky and soft, and before he could say anything else, she pushed up on her toes and kissed him. This time it wasn't hesitant or testing. It was full of certainty and fire, the kind of kiss that left no room for doubt. When she pulled back, she kept her forehead against his. I'm scared, she whispered. So am I, he said. But I've never been more sure of anything in my life. They stayed like that, the city behind them and the future in front of them. Weeks passed, not in the blur of chaos Alec had once known, but in the rhythm of something steadier. Faye started classes, her nights filled with textbooks and clinicals. Alec helped her paint the walls of the clinic, white with pale blue trim. He carried boxes and held ladders and never once tried to take over. He'd learned that love wasn't about control. It was about showing up, over and over, even when it was hard, especially then. One morning, as the clinic sign was being installed, Faye's name in clean, bold script above the doorway, she found Alec leaning against the frame, watching her. You look proud, she said. I am. Of the clinic? Of you. She nudged him with her shoulder. You built empires. He looked at her, eyes steady. This is the only one that matters. A week later, they held the opening ceremony. It wasn't a gala. There were no champagne towers or red carpets. Just folding chairs, neighbors from the block, and a local choir that sang under the awning. Alec stood beside Faye as she cut the ribbon with a pair of borrowed scissors. When someone asked if they were married, Faye laughed and looked at him. He didn't answer. Not yet. But 3 days later, he took her back to the rooftop where it had all started. The garden was lit with small lanterns, and on the table rested a single velvet box. She opened it slowly and stared down at the ring, simple, elegant, and unmistakably hers. He didn't get on one knee. He just took her hand and said, "Build forever with me." And she nodded, tears in her eyes. They didn't need a grand wedding. They didn't need headlines. They just needed each other. And in a world that had once tried to swallow them both, they found something far rarer than wealth. They found peace. Together. Alec adjusted the cuffs of his shirt as he stepped inside the modest community center, where Faye was seated at a long table, surrounded by a dozen people from the neighborhood. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, flipping through a stack of papers while someone beside her gestured toward a floor plan. He waited by the doorway, watching the way she nodded slowly, asked a question, then scribbled something in the margin. There was a quiet command in her presence now, something that hadn't been there when they first met. It wasn't just determination, it was authority, earned through the weight of doing things the hard way. When she finally looked up and noticed him, her face softened. "Give me 10 minutes, she said, moving toward him. "Take 15, Alec replied. "I'll wait." She leaned in, kissed his cheek, and turned back to her team. He wandered down the hallway, past peeling bulletin boards and hand-painted murals. The center had been a forgotten place until Faye proposed converting part of it into an outreach extension of her clinic. Free screenings, health education, and a rotating staff of volunteers. She'd pitched it to the city council herself, convinced a small grant committee to fund the beginning stages, and pulled in every favor she'd ever earned from the community. Alec hadn't stepped in. She'd asked him not to. She wanted this one to be hers from start to finish. When she finally emerged, she looked tired but satisfied. "They approved the new schedule," she said, slipping her arm through his as they walked back toward the car. "We'll start next month with Saturday workshops. I've already got 2 med students from the university volunteering." He opened the passenger door for her. "You're changing the way this place breathes." She slid into the seat. "No, I'm just giving it lungs." Alec rounded the car and got in beside her. "I booked us a weekend away, by the way." She blinked, turning toward him. "Where?" "Somewhere quiet. No cell service. Just trees, a lake, and a fireplace." She narrowed her eyes. "What's the occasion?" He started the engine. "You've been working yourself into the ground. I figured we could use a couple days to remember what it feels like to breathe." She reached over and laced her fingers through his. "You're going to make me soft." He brought her hand to his lips. "You were never hard." The cabin set nestled in a private clearing upstate, a 2-hour drive from the city. Faye stood on the porch that night, wrapped in a thick sweater, watching the wind ripple through the trees. Alec was inside, lighting the fire. The sound of crackling would drifted out behind her. "You're too good at this," she said when he came up behind her with 2 glasses of wine. "Building fires?" "Creating stillness," she replied, taking a sip. "You used to be all motion." "I still am. I just save it for what matters." They stayed on the porch until the stars blinked into view, then curled up inside, the fire warming the room. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked, her head resting on his chest. "The boardrooms, the power, the headlines?" "No," Alec said, running his hand through her hair. "I used to think I'd lose myself without all that. But it turns out I only started finding myself after I walked away." Faye was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I want to take your last name." He looked down, surprised. "You sure?" "I've never been sure of anything," she said. "I want to wear it like armor. Not because I need protection, but because you're the only thing that's ever felt like home." He didn't say anything. He just reached for her hand and slid a thin gold band from his pocket. "I was going to wait until spring," he murmured. "But I think now works even better." She let out a soft laugh that was half a sob. "You really don't do things halfway, do you?" "Not with you." They married a month later in the garden above their building. Only 20 people were there, friends, neighbors, the clinic staff. She wore a tea-length dress she'd found in a vintage shop. He wore a navy suit that matched the color of the sky that day. There were no photographers, no press, no announcements. Just vows whispered in the wind and hands clasped tightly enough to hold back a lifetime of doubt. Afterward, they danced under string lights and toasted with lemonade and champagne. Someone played an old jazz record from a portable speaker. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Alec pulled her close and said, "You're the best thing I've ever done." "Good," Faye replied, "because I plan on reminding you of that every day for the rest of our lives." They moved into a brownstone 2 blocks from the clinic. It had creaky floors, a tiny garden out back, and a clawfoot tub that Faye claimed was the single best investment Alec had ever made. The upstairs bedroom became an office for her studies. The downstairs nook by the window became his favorite place to write letters, ideas, sometimes just the things he never wanted to forget. On weekends, they hosted dinners for the people who mattered no more than 6 at a time, always with mismatched plates and too much food. Faye's chili became legendary. Alec took pride in mastering sourdough, something he'd once scoffed at. They traveled when they could, always off-season, always to places where no one cared who Alec Knight used to be. They hiked trails without names, swam in lakes without lifeguards, danced barefoot on balconies in countries where neither of them spoke the language. And when the clinic expanded into its second location, Faye didn't ask for help. She handed Alec a clipboard and said, "We're doing this together." Years passed, but the rhythm never faded. They fought sometimes about groceries or schedules or the ridiculous placement of outlet sockets, but they always found their way back to the middle. One winter evening, As snow began to fall outside their living room window, Alex sat beside her on the couch, her feet tucked under his legs, a blanket draped across both of them. He glanced at her, then toward the fireplace, where a framed photo of their wedding day rested on the mantel. "You know," he said, "if someone told the man I used to be that this would be the life he'd choose, he wouldn't have believed it." Faye reached over and threaded her fingers through his. "Then it's a good thing you stopped listening to him." And for Alec Knight, a man who once believed the world could only be conquered through ambition and solitude, there was no greater victory than the love he found in a woman who refused to be impressed by anything except his heart. They had everything they needed, and they never let go.